Hello and welcome to this evening's webinar. We are delighted to welcome you all. Tonight we're going to be talking about developing positive relationships. I'm just going to give it a few moments to allow people to join the call. We've had an overwhelming number of people register for tonight, over 800 of you. So we are really excited to get started. I'm just going to give it a few moments. I can see the numbers clocking up here. Welcome to you all. If you have joined already, we've got the chat box here. Please do just let us know that you can hear us and see us okay with a quick hello or yes in that chat box. Hello, brilliant, hi, welcome, fantastic, wonderful. We will be using that chat box this evening, so please do interact with us. Let us know any questions that you might have. If you'd like to change it so that your questions and comments go to everyone, that would be fantastic too. Wonderful. So I'm Louise. I'm going to be taking you through the ideas today, and my colleague Francis. Fran is also on the call. We're going to be introducing ourselves in just a moment. But I hope you're all well. Thank you for giving up your Tuesday evening after no doubt a busy, long weekend. A really important topic this evening about helping our children develop positive relationships, and it's a really emotive one, and we're going to be sharing lots of ideas and top tips for you as parents. We've got parents on the call, we have teachers with many of the schools that we partner with, so a little bit of housekeeping first of all, just while many of you more joining the call. We will be sharing a copy of all the slides and a recording of the webinar with all of you who registered. So rest assured you will get that. That will be coming out to you tomorrow at some point. So welcome to you all. If you're not sure whether you ticked when you registered, you were asked if you'd like to hear from us at Role Models. Not only will we send you the slides and a recording, but we often have other blogs, tips, offers for you as well, and many of you said that you'd love to hear from us. If you're not sure whether you ticked yes, you can just get in touch with us to confirm that indeed you would like to hear from us and receive further info. Fran, brilliant, you've just popped our email address in the chat box there, info@rolemodels.me. So we had an overwhelming number of questions from you too when you registered. Loads of questions about how do I help my child manage quite a toxic relationship with a friend? How do I help my child who doesn't have many friends, or perhaps is just locked on to one particular best friend? We will try our very best to get through lots of those questions. In the top tips we're going to share, many of them will be covered, but do use that chat box if there's time at the end. Fran and I will be doing a sort of live Q&A where we'll cover as many as we possibly can. So, welcome to you all. I am now going to get started. We're a couple of minutes in. I'm sure we'll have many more people join as we go through. So, let's have a look here. We are going to introduce ourselves first of all. So, I'm Louise, and my background is in teaching. So I was a primary school teacher for over 12 years in the independent sector. And I also spent 5 years as a senior deputy head teacher. And friendships were definitely something that came up time and time again. You know, it's not just about the academics, we know that. In my role as a deputy head, I had a lot to do with pastoral care. And beyond my teaching background, I then trained to become a coach. And I coach young people, children, teenagers, parents and adults. And my role at Role Models as Director of Character Education is all about equipping young children with the types of life skills they need to thrive. And friendships, that dynamic with tricky relationships comes up all the time, and it's about how do we give our children the confidence to deal with them. So very much using my experience from education and coaching to bring you some ideas this evening. I'll pass over to my colleague Fran.
Good evening, everybody. Lovely to be here with you all. I also, like Louise, was a teacher. I was a teacher for 13 years, both in the UK and internationally. And part of that time, I was also head of PSHE. So again, dealing with a lot of pastoral issues that would come up with children around friendships and managing how they felt about these things. I've recently completed my master's in psychology. So that's given me another real in-depth ability to kind of understand what drives us to feel these different things within these different relationships. And I now work with Louise in the education team at Role Models. So I'm going to hand you back, and Louise is going to explain a bit more about who we are and what we do, just for anybody who perhaps hasn't joined us for one of these webinars before.
Fantastic, thanks, Fran. So many of you are familiar to us. I can see lots of familiar names who have joined, but if perhaps you don't know much about what we do at Role Models, just to give you a brief insight, we are all about giving children a toolkit. We know that academics alone, are not enough, and we really look at the social and emotional well-being of a child. So we like to give them a toolkit to help them build their confidence, manage their emotions, and develop friendships. And we hear time and time again from parents, these are areas in which children and parents really, really require, further support with. And we believe that if we work on these things, we're setting them up for a happy, healthy life where they can have a good relationship with self, but a good relationship with others as well. Now, how do we do that? We provide in-person and online learning for children aged 5 to 13 years old. And we do it through our fantastic role models. So we have friendly, fun, experienced mentors who are passionate about working with young people in this way. We're going to be sharing a bit more information later on about how that online learning works and about our in-person courses too. But if you do come away from this evening and you want to know more, you'll see our website there. You can check that out. And Fran will be putting lots of information in the chat box tonight with different links that you can click on to find out more.
Yep, I'm adding those in now, and we will put them in a little bit later as well. So don't worry if you miss them and if they get lost in the long chat. I'll keep adding them in as we go.
Super. Thanks, Fran. Okay, so a quick question for you all. It's really great for us to get a sense of who's joined us this evening and how old your child is. Now, many of you will be joining with perhaps more than one child. So I'm going to launch a poll, and if you can let me know how old your child is, and just hold the child in mind that perhaps you believe needs the most support when it comes to friendships. And I'll just give you a bit of time to fill that in. Great, I can see lots of you are doing that now. Thanks so much.
We've had a few responses in the chat as well, actually. So obviously a real variety of ages. And those sort of often age gaps that we get, sort of 2 years between siblings, 3 and 4 years between siblings.
Absolutely. And the great thing about this evening is we're really hoping that the ideas we share with you are going to be relevant, whether your child is 4 or whether your child is 14. Super. So I'm going to end that poll now, and I'll just share those results with you. So you can see a real spread this evening, but I can see the majority in that 8 to 11 bracket, but we have people on the call with teenagers and children on the call with toddlers as well. So a whole range there. Great. Okay, let me close that one down. So let's begin just by having a think about why friendships are so important. As I mentioned at the start, it is a very emotive topic. As I said, we had over 800 of you register for this evening, and you're here because you also recognise that your child's friendships are incredibly important. But how and why are they? Well, they definitely provide your child the opportunity to develop their social skills, which we know are so important. So by developing friendships, your child then learns how to negotiate, how to use conflict resolution skills, how to interact and communicate effectively. Also about resilience. We talk a lot about resilience and a growth mindset at Role Models. Friendships are a fantastic way of practicing that. As we'll go into in more detail, we know we have to navigate friendships. They have their ups and they also have their downs. So it's about exposing your child to those to be able to build their resilience. And good friendships, healthy friendships, definitely help your child to reduce their stress levels, because they have ways of getting that support from the friendships that they have. We know that friendships can have a positive impact on behavior. Many of you have talked about, perhaps my child has a friend that I'm not sure is a good influence, and I'd perhaps like them to have a more positive influence on them. They definitely help to promote a positive outlook on life. They increase your child's capacity for empathy, hugely important, and the idea of that emotional intelligence. The more time our children spend with others, interacting, understanding how their actions and choices can have an impact on other people, the more emotionally intelligent they become. And we know that emotional intelligence is incredibly important when it comes to leadership. So you might not yet be seeing that link between friendships and friends and being a leader, but it's definitely there. We know that friendships can help support your children's emotional and social development, as we've said, all those different social skills. And ultimately, what's most important for our children? We want them to be happy. We want them to get that satisfaction, and we want really good levels of well-being, and friendships give us that. I think we've seen, particularly post-pandemic, just how important good quality friendships are, not just for our children, but for all of us. They positively impact self-esteem. Again, many of you talked about, I'm not sure my child's friendship is positively impacting their self-esteem. Perhaps it's a negative influence at the moment. But if we can get them right, we do see that positive impact. And of course, more generally, they create that sense of belonging. Many of you mentioned that worry of if my child's starting a new school, they're worrying about, will I belong? Will I have new friends there? So we know how important they are. I mentioned that lots of you have already submitted questions, but I would love for you now, just in the chat box, to let Fran and I know, what do you struggle with most when it comes to supporting your child with friendship issues? So you've all joined the webinar this evening. Let's get some conversation going in that chat box about, how do you see friendship issues impacting your child, and what's been the driving force about you joining this evening? So I'll give you a few moments just to type your ideas in there. Lots coming up here. How to stand up to somebody. Yeah, emotional outbursts coming home related to friendship issues. Intense relationships.
Struggling to forgive and not being able to move on. That's come up a little bit. And quite a lot around being a bit obsessed over our friendships and, really trying to please an awful lot, trying a little bit hard almost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So much coming through, isn't there?
So much. And do you know what? I would really encourage us all on the call this evening to just look at that chat box and take from that you and your child are not alone. These issues that we're talking about this evening are incredibly common, and they impact not just your child, but lots of other children out there. And as a parent, you can see just how many others have joined the webinar this evening, because they're also looking for support. So I think that's really important to say, isn't it, Fran, that this is something that impacts all of us.
Absolutely. And I think you're right in knowing that we're not alone in it can be sort of half the battle in finding ways to manage it, really, because it can feel quite isolating, can't it? And you feel like your child is perhaps the only one that's experiencing these things. And we go through it as adults as well. So it's a very common life skill that we need to navigate through. Yes,
definitely. So I can see lots in there. It's too many for us to pick out each and every one, but I'm hopeful as we go through these 10 ideas that we've got to share with you, there'll be something in there about many of these topics that you've listed in that chat box. So thank you for sharing those. I am going to move on and let's make a start. So I've mentioned these top tips and ideas. Some of them might be ones that you've heard of before. They might not be, brand new to you, but I think it's really important to just bring them back to the forefront of our mind. And some of them are about things you can do for your child and ways that you can explain things. Some of them are for us as the adult, about how we can respond and what we need to think about when we are responding to the different friendship woes that come up. So let's dive in. Okay, so idea number one. I think it's really important for us to start here. If we want our child to develop healthy relationships with their friends, we need to really help them develop that healthy relationship with self. So what do I mean by that? Well, it's really important for our children to know who they are and to like who they are. Now, that's a really big statement. How do we help them like who they are? I would say, let's start off really small. So this could be about literally talking to your child, obviously depending on their age, about what they like to do, what their likes and their dislikes. Okay, so you're someone who really likes building Lego. You're someone that really loves football and sport. What do you not like? And by having these conversations, we're building our child's sense of themselves. And we also want to really build their self-esteem, okay, and their confidence and how they view themselves. Because if they've got a positive sense of self, they will be much, much more ready to put in their boundaries and stick to those when it comes to how other people treat us. Now, also coming into this is about speaking your truth. So once we really know who we are and what we like and what we don't like, we need to dabble and practice in really being confident to speak our truth. So this might be as simple as being open with our opinion, wearing that piece of clothing that we really like that maybe others wouldn't in our friendship group. It's about being true to ourselves. And I think this then follows on to the idea, if we can discourage in our children this idea of shape shifting. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, we've all seen it in others or perhaps in ourselves when we change ourselves depending on the group of people that we're with or the person that we're with. And we're not true to ourselves. We behave in a different way. We pretend we like something when we don't. And we can talk to our child about this. Now, in my coaching background, I've had conversations with children as young as 6 or 7 about this. When you pretended to like that thing, how did it feel? How did it make you feel? And then we go to the other extreme. When you were honest with what you liked and what you didn't, or you wore the thing that you wanted to wear, or you said, I don't want to play football because it doesn't interest me. How did that make you feel? And they can articulate it. Do you know what? I felt really good. I felt strong. I felt like me, and I wasn't pretending. And we can have that conversation. That felt good because you were speaking your truth. I'd also encourage you to have a conversation with your child about what's important for them in a friendship. Many of you have asked this evening, how do we define good friendship? What should we be telling our child to look for in a friend? And I think it's got to be a collaboration with them. We need to ask our child, what's important to you? And they might say, well, humor. I really, really want to find a friend that makes me laugh. Or for others, it might be, it's really important to me that someone's honest and I can trust them. I want to know that I can trust them with a secret or that they won't embarrass me. And what we're trying to do here by defining what their sort of perfect friend would be, we're actually helping them to establish their own boundaries as well. So that's where I think we should start. Healthy relationship with self. Know who we are, like who we are, begin to speak our truth and think about what we're looking for. Idea number 2. So this is one more for us as parents. So many of you listed all all those types of things, when our child comes back and says that heartbreaking thing, I had no one to play with today, or they left me out, they excluded me, they were really unkind, they embarrassed me, whatever the sort of friendship woe might be, when our child comes back and says it to us, it's really difficult, isn't it? But my idea here is to encourage you to try and resist the urge to fix it, which is so hard to do. Why is it so important to resist that urge? It's triggering for us. We all have so much of our own emotional baggage going on when it comes to friendships. We have our own memories, our own friendship woes, in our minds. And when we become triggered like that, our emotional part of our own brain kicks into action. And what does it want to do? It wants to control the situation. It wants to fix it. It wants to stop it for our child. Of course, and we're doing that from the best possible place. But I suppose the worry here is when that kicks into action, the message that we might be giving our child is, this is terrible that you're feeling this negative feeling. We need to stop it. I need to fix it for you. And the key there is for you. We want to be giving our child the message that we trust in their capability. And ultimately, we want to just say to them, hard times feel hard, but that's okay. I totally trust in you to work through this feeling. Now, my big bit of advice here is to try this instead. When your child comes back and says that, they left me out, they didn't let me play, is to actually say to them, what do you need from me here? Do you need my advice? Okay, that's option one. I can tell you what I think you should do. Do you want us to sit and problem solve together for this and work out some options to do? Or do you want me to just listen? And it's quite amazing when I've tried this before, how many times the child will just say, I just want you to listen. I just want to tell you about it. I want to tell you how upset I am. I might need your comfort, but very rarely do they want us to just completely fix it for them. And when we check in with ourselves, we realize that it's our own emotional stuff going on that is feeling the need to do that. But it's not easy. Fran, I'm sure you'd agree here, the number of times we've given this as a top tip, but it's really hard to do, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so difficult because it's really triggering for us as adults, isn't it, as the parents and teachers of these children. But I think and you're so right, I get it as well, they just want you to listen. And that kind of just empowers them to come up with some solutions of their own. And also it takes the onus away from the kind of pain of the problem and helps them kind of you reassess it with a different kind of energy on it, which always helps them lead to a solution, I think. So yeah, I really love this tip. I think it's really empowering, but very tricky to do. I do understand that.
Yeah, and to add, there will be times when your child will say, I want your advice, right? I need that. That's what I want. So do it. Don't feel like you can't do that.
Absolutely.
But I suppose what we want to do is we want to build their coping skills and their resilience. And in the moment for us, we only see the here and now. We see them upset. But perhaps what's helpful for us to think about is the long-term gain, that actually this might be difficult holding our child in that uncomfortable feeling. But what we're doing for them in the long run is we're helping them become more resilient and be able, let's face it, they're going to face these ups and downs multiple times throughout their life. So by teaching them that they can get through it now, it will only give them further confidence later on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, idea number 3. So I suppose following on from that, resisting the urge to fix it, and alongside that instead, we can maybe try and focus instead on empathizing. And I always find it really helpful to think about how I feel. If I come home at the end of my day and I speak to my partner about a situation that's happened, and it might be with a friend, what do I need in that moment? As we've said already, I don't need my partner to turn around and say, well, Lou, it sounds like you should have done this instead, or why don't you just go and do that? I need my partner to listen to me and to really empathetically understand how I feel. And what we're doing is we're trying to normalize this idea of friendship struggles. Now, I don't mean that we just say, oh, that's fine, you know, it's fine that you've fallen out with your friend. We're not dismissing it, we're normalizing it by listening and just being empathetic and saying, no, that sounds really tough. And again, a phrase I find really helpful, have I ever told you about? Now, we need to use it quite sparingly because it can become a bit empty if we overuse it. But in that moment when your friend is, your child is sharing their friendship difficulties, just go, oh, you know, I can just see how upset you are about that. Have I ever told you about the time that I got left out? Or have I told you about that time that I didn't get invited to that party that I desperately wanted to go to? And it's a really effective way of setting up that empathetic conversation, because our child literally goes, oh, it's happened to you too. You know, and then you can have that conversation about how did it feel for you and what did you do? But I think our main job is to help our child move from their emotion part of their brain, which is their amygdala, which again is just emotion, I'm stuck in that place, and instead shift them to their rational part of their brain, their prefrontal cortex. And it's not an easy shift, but through our empathy, they can begin to go, okay, it's all right that I feel this big emotion, and now I can begin to think rationally about what I want to do next. And ultimately, I think our empathy needs to be a place free of judgment and criticism. So trying to stay away from all of those comments that can come, you know, again, with such good intention of, oh, well, you should have done this. Oh, you're fine. You'll work it out. You know, we're not judging, we're not criticizing, we are literally just holding that empathetic space. Okay. Idea number 4. I wanted to give some more ideas for how you can structure these conversations. So many of you said, you know, I just don't know what to say when my child talks about this difficult friend they've got or their best friend. I'm a great believer as a coach that good questions lead to really good conversations. So what questions can we have as parents to use? I just want to run through some of these, and perhaps you can, as you listen, start to think about how they might work for you and your child, depending on the age. So you might need to change some of these slightly. What bothered you most about what happened? You know, we're just trying to really unpick. We're not judging, we're not fixing, we're not criticizing anything. We're just asking for more information. Oh, how did it feel when your friend said that? And then a kind of, oh, how do you think she's feeling about all of this? And then maybe a, how do you feel about it now you've had a chance to think? You know, this is something that you're telling me at the end of the day and it happened earlier on. If you could go back in time, what might you do differently? And you'll notice that a lot of those questions are open-ended questions. So not just, did you tell the teacher? Yes or no. It's really inviting them to give a bit more. How, why, what? And then that last one there, I'm just wondering if, sounds very coachy, doesn't it? But I love this because it takes us out of that mode of, why don't you just do this? And it's an offering. We're inviting our child. So we're saying, you know, I'm just wondering if it might be helpful if X, Y, Z. Or I'm just wondering if when you said this, I'm just wondering how your friend Lucy felt when you said that. Or I'm just wondering if there's something else we could do to help you next time this might happen. It just lands a little bit better. But yeah, try some of these questions out. I think they're really good ones to use, and you'll see how you might get a little bit more from your child. Lots of you said how difficult it is to kind of get to the bottom and to get them talking. So give some of these a try.
I think that I'm wondering if it's really magical, actually, Lou. I've used it a lot as a teacher, and it's quite amazing how it opens up conversation, and you can almost see the child's mind start, you know, turning things over and thinking, oh, actually, maybe I could be thinking about this a little bit differently. So yeah, definitely recommend trying that one if you haven't done.
Yeah, definitely. It's just kind of not as threatening, is it? That
exactly. Yeah.
Okay, idea number 5. Many of you mentioned my child's joining a new school or a new club or a new social situation, or how do I just get them to make more friends? You know, they don't seem to have the right skills to be able to do it. So let's talk a little bit about that. How do we encourage our child to connect with new people? Practice. It sounds a really obvious point, doesn't it? But I don't think we should assume that our child knows how to do it. You know, I think many of our children will have found themselves in a class full of children from reception, and maybe that class has just moved up throughout the year groups, and they've just found themselves always surrounded by the same people. So we kind of assume that they know how to make friends, but we haven't ever explicitly taught them the skills. So practice, practice. And I think let's be really obvious about this. Let's say, you know, oh, when I go to a new place, when I'm going to this work thing tomorrow, these are some of the things that I do. When I find myself in a group of brand new people that I've never met before, here's how I deal with it. And one of the things that I give a child to do is the idea of preparing questions. And we talk about having this kind of killer question. And it could be anything, you know, again, age appropriate. So for some, it might be, what's your favorite TV show? It could literally be, what's your name? Or it could be, do you like Minecraft? Right? It's whatever feels authentic for your child. And it's literally about saying to them, you have that question up your sleeve the whole time. We've practiced it, you know it, and don't bombard them with loads, just give them one. And when they feel nervous and overwhelmed, they can literally just say, I've got my killer question. That's going to open up conversation, and it's going to kind of break the ice. For slightly older children and, you know, early teens, I would definitely encourage them to make sure that their questions are open-ended, so that they don't just get the yes, no from the other person and it just stops there. Really encourage them a kind of how or why question. And then I love to remind children about the power of a smile. I also remind adults about this too, actually. But we forget, you know, confidence is not just about the words we use and what we say. Confidence can be walking into a room of new people and smiling, and we connect through a smile. It's infectious. So I love to see how a child responds when I tell them this, because they go, yeah, I can do that. I can smile. You know, I've never thought of that. And we don't realize how our smile drops as well so easily. So remind your child that. And humor. Children are incredibly funny, and I think humor is a great connector. So encourage that in your child. You know, practice a joke, or say, you know, you are someone who is great at making people laugh. When you're in a new situation with new people, remember that. And you'll see how your humor just has that ability to relax a situation and connect with other people. Trying new things, I would definitely be encouraging your children to take every opportunity to try something new and go somewhere new. So particularly if you notice that your child struggles with that, the more they do it, the more normal it becomes and the more comfortable they get with that discomfort. So, you know, new clubs, new social situations, go with them. And if that feels too overwhelming for them on their own, do it as a family. They say, you know, we're going to go and do some rock climbing, we're going to go and do some tennis, and get chatting to people and show them how it can be done. And that leads quite nicely onto passion points. In our sessions for children at Role Models, when we do the explicit teaching of, you know, connecting with new people, we encourage them to use their passion points. So take the thing that you love and use it to connect with other people. So that could be Lego, it could be music, it could be comedy, it could be absolutely anything, football. And you will find your people through your passion point. So that can happen naturally, or you could seek out social opportunities and clubs and, you know, where other people might be hanging out who like the things that you like. But once they find that connection, it really is magical, isn't it? When two children come together and can't stop talking about whatever it might be. And then my last point here is reminding your child about the importance of showing an interest in others. So we talk about helping your child become interesting and interested, particularly in the context of 11+ interviews and things like that. I think children are brilliant at coming across interesting, so they know how to talk about themselves, can say what they're good at, say what they like, where they've been on holiday, but sometimes they forget that they've got to show an interest in other people too. So remind them that and say, again, this comes through the questions, doesn't it? That you're great at meeting someone new and telling them what you like, but let's remember we've also got to be interested in them. So, can you find out 2 new things about them? So hopefully some ideas there about how to connect with other people. Okay, we are pausing here at sort of idea number 5, and we've got 5 more to share. But just in this short pause, I wanted to share this slide here. I mentioned at Role Models, we do in-person courses. A really great way of helping your child develop many of these different skills we've been talking about. And here you'll see a list of some of the different venues that we deliver these in-person courses, helping your child to deliver really essential leadership skills, collaboration, resilience, growth mindset. When you receive a copy of these slides, these are all clickable links. So you'll see we've got many for children aged 5 to 7 and age 8 to 11. So once you receive these, you can click on those and find out a little bit more. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Fran, who's going to talk a little bit about our online learning.
Thanks, Lou, and perfect timing because a few people have just asked in the chat if we could mention our online sessions as well. So obviously in person, we'd love to be everywhere all over the country, but we're not. So if they're not at a local place to you, we do have classes running every week throughout the whole year, and they are our masterclass sessions. And the way this works is you can log on and your child can attend a weekly session. And they run 3 times a week. So you've got 3 opportunities to attend it. So it's really flexible. They are Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Sundays. So if you normally attend on a Tuesday, but you miss it for some reason, you don't lose out. You can still attend on the Wednesday or on the Sunday. And like the in-person courses, these cover all of our themes and everything that we're talking about today and everything that we talk about in a lot of our other webinars. So all of the resilience, the collaboration, the leadership, and the creative problem solving. And they are split into different age groups. So you've got your 5 to 7, your 8 to 11, or your 8 to 10, and your 11 to 13. And they are interactive, live. They're a lot of fun. People sometimes say, oh, after all the online learning with school, how do the children find it being there for 60 minutes? Well, actually, they love it and they engage really well. The role models are brilliant at keeping them really active. We have them going around the house and doing scavenger hunts. There are worksheets or activity sheets for them to do during the session. And afterwards, you get an email as well that fills you in on what your child's spoken about that session and the activities they've done and the learning aspects that they've explored. So you can reinforce that through the week, discuss it with them if you need to. You get after activity sheets to do as well. So it's really interactive for both you and them. Lots of interaction with us whenever you need it as well. And they are every week, as I've said, and I think we've currently got a bit of a half price offer going on as well. Have I missed anything, Lou?
No, I think that's great. Oh, I've got, sorry, the time.
There we go, the days. Yeah,
the days.
brilliant.
Yeah.
What I'll do is put the link in as well that takes you straight to the website, so you don't have to have remembered everything I've just said very quickly.
Yeah, great. So do click on that link that Fran's putting there to register your interest for those. And if you come away with more questions, do drop us an email. We're more than happy, or pick up the phone to chat to you about those. Okay, I'm going to dive right back in with idea number 6. And it's interesting because I just saw a comment in the chat box about personalities and how our personalities are as parents, which kind of falls into this idea. So this is about resisting forced socializing. Many of you mentioned my child perhaps spends a lot of time on their own, or my child has not got many friends. you know, I'm concerned about it, I'm worried about it. How do I encourage them to make more friends? And I totally understand that concern, by the way. I suppose the invitation here is to just consider maybe your child is actually quite different to you, which it is quite common that, you know, perhaps you as a parent, you have loads of friends, you're quite extroverted, and maybe your child only has one, a really good best friend. Or maybe your child is coming back to you and saying, I played on my own today and I'm not upset by it, I quite liked it. And I think here it's important for us just to reflect on personality. I mentioned introversion and extroversion, and just consider how your child recharges, how they get their energy. For many introverts, socializing is quite draining for them. And this doesn't mean that they don't enjoy it. It doesn't mean that they're not capable of forming friendships. It simply means that they need to balance it with alone time, and that is how they recharge their energy. So I suppose stop and think, is it you that's worried about this, or is it your child? You know, if your child's coming home and saying, I played alone today and I'm really upset by it and I really don't want that to be the case, I want more friends, that's quite a different situation. But if your child is saying, you know, I'm quite happy reading my book during playtime, that's what I chose to do, then perhaps we need to just listen to that. And I think another idea here is being mindful of how we define our child. So many parents talk to us about, oh, my child's quite shy. You know, they seem to lack the social skills to be able to make a new friendship or to even just talk to someone new. And when we're using our words, just try and be really careful about defining. So if we say, you know, why are you being so shy? Or even in front of them to say, oh, sorry, she's shy. She's shy, she won't know, she doesn't know how to sort of do this. Instead, make that shift to feeling shy. So we can still address it, we can still talk about it and say, you know, were you feeling shy then? Let's talk about some ways, power of a smile, killer question, all those things that we've mentioned before. But feeling shy is very different to saying you are shy, because it does become a bit of a defining in a box. I'm someone who's shy, I'm not capable of speaking to new people, and then you become it, and it's really, you know, self-fulfilling, isn't it? So if you do have that conversation, do try and use feeling rather than is. And then I think just listen to your child. As I mentioned, if it's you doing the worrying or if it's them, if your child says they're happy with their situation, I think there's an element of respecting that. Doesn't mean that we can't ever encourage them to make different friendships and new ones, but just taking that time to listen to what they want and what they need as well. Okay, idea number 7. And this, I think, was probably one of the most mentioned in our registration questions. How do we help our child when they find themselves in an unhealthy friendship? And many of you use the word toxic. So a very strong individual. Now, what do we mean by unhealthy? If your child has ever suffered with any of these, so their friend disrespects their wants, their needs, their boundaries, maybe they're quite possessive, maybe they make them feel guilty for spending time with other friends, maybe it's quite one way, so it's always the friend asking your child to do stuff but they're never doing it the other way round, and maybe it's quite unpredictable as a friendship. It can be very hard as a parent to hear them talk about this. And I've been amazed, actually. I coached a child as young as 7 who clearly articulated to me, you know, I've got this friend, and she said, I always feel nervous when I'm with her because I don't know whether she's going to be really kind to me or really mean. It could be either of the two, and I just don't know. And she also said, you know, she talks quite meanly about other people to me. And this girl said at age 7, you know, it makes me worry that she will talk about me like that to other people. So we can almost identify these as red flags. And I actually talk to the children about them in this way. You know, what do we look on the lookout for? What to us is a red flag? Now, for me, those things that we've just mentioned are definitely red flags. And a red flag is something that's signaling to us, you know, is this a healthy relationship for me? I think the easiest thing we can do as a parent, like if we just say to our child, don't spend time with that person, it's probably not going to work. And many of you said this, you know, I've tried to get my child to see this unhealthy dynamic, and they are going back for more and more and more. I think it's much better to ask this question instead. How do you feel when you're with that person? Or how do you feel after you've spent time with them? Okay. And really try and help your child to articulate that, because they might say, well, do you know what? I do feel a bit uneasy, or it leaves me with a bad feeling. Or like I said with the girl, you know, the example I gave, I just don't know where I'm going to get. And if you can say to your child, when you spend time with that friend, do they make you feel big or do they make you feel small? Because I think we'd all agree that good, healthy, positive relationships should build us up. They should make us feel big. They should make us feel good about ourselves. We should laugh when we're with them. We should feel safe. We should feel comfortable. We shouldn't be made to feel small. And that's quite often what happens with toxic friendships. You come away in many different ways just feeling quite small. Do they energize you, or do they take away your energy? Are they exhausting? Do they sap your energy? So have these conversations with your child, and maybe even sit down and say, well, what are red flags for you? You know, particularly I'm talking older children here, like early teens. And define that and say, okay, a red flag for you is quite obviously you don't want to be treated X, Y, and Z in these ways. So the next step now is for when that happens, it doesn't necessarily mean you need to cut the relationship off straight away. It doesn't need to be that definite, but a conversation is needed. Or maybe you need to be a little bit wary about that. And I think we also need to address the elephant in the room, which is friendships come and go. Friendships can end. And talk to your child about your own examples. So they might think that all friendships have to sustain time. So say to them, you know, I once had a friend that I was very, very close with. We drifted apart, or perhaps, you know, our lives were different, or perhaps I saw some red flags. And actually, it's okay for a friendship to end, for it to fizzle out, for it to airball to flow. And backing off from a friendship does not make you a bad person. I think children need to understand that, because they're quite often conditioned into thinking you've got to be kind to everybody. You've got to be respectful. You've got to be that lovely, positive person. So of course they're thinking, well, I can't turn around to them and say, I don't want to be your friend. So explain to them that you putting yourself first and you deciding that those red flags cross your boundaries, that does not make you a bad person. You know, you can be a good person and still say, I'm choosing not to spend time with that friend. So I hope this is kind of landing and making sense. I can see lots of comments coming into the chat box. But I think, Fran, I'm sure you'd agree, this is probably, I think, the sort of hottest topic, isn't it, when it comes to friendships?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been trying to give sort of individual responses in the chat as well. So I hope that's helping. But I think a lot of the questions coming through, or they're almost being addressed the moment they come through, actually. And I think on this one as well, if it's so hard to do, but if your child can be the one to almost model for the others that it's okay that friendships ebb and flow, it's like they're giving permission to those around them to also know that's okay. And sometimes just taking away that tension that can really build up between friendships just allows people to naturally then find their people and find who is a positive friend for them. So yeah, thank you for all the comments in the chat, and I am doing my very best to look at them all, and anything we don't address now we will try and address at the end.
Great. And I think it's difficult. I remember somebody asked before the webinar about, you know, what do I do as a parent? Do I discourage this friendship and say, don't be friends with that person anymore, don't spend time with them? or do I let it play out? You know, I understand that I need to develop their resilience. So which one shall I do? And I don't think it necessarily needs to be an either or. So as I mentioned, it doesn't always have to be a definite, I'm no longer friends with that person. Perhaps we can talk to our child about backing off, but maybe in the future, you might want to dip your toe in again. You know, we can allow people that time to change. If you recognize their behavior right now, there are red flags, it's an unhealthy relationship for you. Yes, we can back off, but there might be times when that friendship develops differently in the future. And again, giving your own examples, I think that's so helpful to model as a parent. And use that phrase, did I ever tell you about the time that I was really close with this person growing up? And then, you know, I backed off that friendship because of these reasons. Okay, let's move on to idea number 8. If we want to help our children to make sure they are communicating assertively, then we need to give them an actual almost script, I find, to be able to do this confidently. So we don't want them to be passive. We don't want them to just be like, yeah, that's fine, whatever you think. Oh, she was mean to me, but you know, she's my friend, so I've got to ignore it. We equally don't want them to be aggressive. We don't want them to be the ones saying, you know, you're this and you're that. I find teaching children to use I statements really effective. So what do I mean by that? Well, we encourage them to lead the conversation with how they feel and what they need. So rather than going in and blaming others, you didn't invite me to the party, you make me so mad, you're an idiot, you're unkind, I'm not being your friend now. It's defining their own feelings instead. So instead of accusing, we are saying, and it's literally leading with the word I feel left out when you don't ask me to play tag. And you can see, can't you? You can hear how that's firmly in a place of being assertive with how I feel. I'm totally in control. And it's definitely not aggressive, but I've really stood my ground there. So this is something that requires practice. And it's the safest place to practice this is at home. So perhaps with a sibling, you know, get them to practice with each other, define how they feel and what they need. And it's something that we cover in the masterclass, as Fran referred to earlier, our online learning, where we literally get the children in the session to practice this. So rather than, you've upset me, you're an idiot, we get them to come up with ideas. How can we change that to be more assertive but not aggressive? I feel upset when you make jokes about me. And this is an activity that we ask them to do in a masterclass session, where we literally take scenarios, and these are obviously age appropriate for the different age groups that we work with, and say, right, let's imagine this scenario. How can you use an I statement to assert yourself and let your friend know that that's not okay for you? The other thing that I think is important here is if we're wanting our children to use I statements, we have to be modeling it ourselves. So within your family unit, with your partner, really try and make an effort to think, what communication style is my child seeing on a day-to-day basis? Because that's what they will ultimately pick up, isn't it? So try really hard to use these I statements yourselves, define what you feel and what you need in the moment. And I think giving your child this kind of script, it doesn't happen straight away, but it gives them something to feel much more powerful in that moment. Another really simple tip, particularly for younger children, is to use their friend's name. Okay, so if they feel quite small in that moment and not able to stand up to that strong character, is to use their name and to literally say, Fran, I don't like it when you make a joke about me in front of others and, you know, everybody laughs. Because by using that person's name, it's again just helping us to have that assertive style in our communication. So yeah, simple tips, but they can be effective in those moments. Okay, idea number 9. Again, another really tricky one, but an important one. that I think we need to tell our children, age appropriately, perhaps not the young ones, that, you know what, not everyone is going to like us, and that's okay. Because I just feel that if your child truly understood this, they're going to be much less likely to partake in people-pleasing behaviours, because they totally get it that, okay, I'm going to be me and I'm going to do me. Some people are going to love it. It's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. Okay. And the way I like to explain this is with an analogy about a film. If I go and watch a film, I might come back and say, Fran, I watched Shrek, this just come into my mind, and I absolutely loved it. It was brilliant. It's the best film ever. Now, Fran might say to me, oh, I watched it too. I didn't really like it. I thought it was a bit boring, actually, not for me. That does not mean that suddenly I have to sit and go, oh, okay, so maybe Shrek is an awful film. Maybe it is boring. I simply have a different opinion about that same film that we've both watched. And it doesn't define that film as now bad. And once our child can understand that, okay, right, so just because one person maybe doesn't want to be my best friend, it doesn't mean that I am not a nice person. It just means that maybe we don't have that chemistry, we haven't clicked, but I will in that way with someone else. So when we're truly ourselves, we understand that not everybody is going to like us, and that is okay. So this needs some explaining, doesn't it? It needs some context, again, maybe some modeling, and maybe for you to say, you know, once I truly understood this, it kind of allowed me to just be myself. And I was ready to know that not everybody wants to be my best friend, because I might not be everyone's cup of tea. And then from there, we can go on to identifying and setting those boundaries and saying, you know, I'm not going to shapeshift. I'm not going to change myself. I really want to be me. And I'm kind of ready to deal with that potential disappointment that it might not be for everybody. So I hope that one has kind of landed and made sense. So we are at number 10 here. And I think, again, another big one, and this is potentially one for the older children. So early teens and teens, understanding that we can't control how other people behave. And I think if, you know, more people understood this as early teens, there'd be a lot better healthy relationships and the sort of understanding as adults, wouldn't there? But if we can get them to understand that you cannot control how other people behave, what they say to you, what they do to you, what they think of you, the only thing we do have influence on is how we choose to respond. So, you know, if our friend does go and do something really mean to us, if we turn around and do the same back, that's been our choice. We have chosen to respond in that way. We always have a choice. And once we understand this fully, that as much as we try, we just don't have influence on other people, it's almost like we can stop worrying about what they're thinking, what they're saying, what they're doing, because it's always going to be there. It's always going to happen, and there's nothing we can do to change it. And instead, we can focus on the things that we can influence. So it sounds like a really big conversation here, but I think it's one to just keep coming back to and just say, you know, what can you control in this situation and what can't you control? So depending on what the friendship dynamic and maybe upset is just to say, okay, this person keeps doing this to you. Are you going to be able to make them stop? Ultimately, no, it's their choice to behave how they behave. What can you influence? Whether you spend time with them, how you respond, what you say to them. So yeah, have a go thinking about this one. Again, lots of modeling from you as a parent about how you've come to understand this as well. Okay, so we have covered, and I'm aware of time here, we're coming up to the hour mark, 10 different sort of top tips and ideas. I'm not suggesting that you go away and try and put all 10 into practice, but I think it's really great when you join a webinar like this to come away with an intention. So perhaps have a look at that list of 10, and in the chat box, let us know which one or two are you going to take away and maybe hold in your mind or put into practice. Which top tips and ideas have been helpful? Which ones have kind of felt relevant to you? Great, I can see lots coming in here. Number 1, 8, and 9. Lots
2 and 10.
Yeah, lots of you saying number 9. I definitely think that idea that not everyone's going to like us and that is okay is a really powerful one to let your child into.
It's great to see, isn't it, the ones that have really resonated with people, and the commonalities in them as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant.
And I just want to reiterate that point that, you know, don't feel overwhelmed by what we've shared with you tonight. Just pick the one that feels most relevant to you. Maybe keep this list so you've got them to come back to as and when you need. So while you are typing that, I'm going to just move on here. It would be great to get your feedback at this point. Lots of you saying that you found the ideas helpful in that chat box. I am going to launch a quick poll here. It would be great if you can let us know how likely you might be to recommend this webinar. We really appreciate your feedback. So you should be able to see the numbers 1 to 10, how likely you are to recommend this. Has it been helpful for you? I'll give you a few minutes just to fill that in. Great, thank you everybody. Give you a couple more minutes. And then we are coming to the end of the content, but I'll close that poll in just a moment, and we are going to come to questions. So fantastic, thank you everybody. Okay, I'm going to end that poll there. And we have one other quick poll to ask you. It's really important to us that we hear from you what you need support with. We get lots of questions at Role Models from parents asking for certain resources, ideas. So we would love to just know, in terms of supporting your child further, so that we can make sure that we send you the right information, helpful information. Let me know here, which areas are you keen to support your child further with? Social skills, managing emotions, developing confidence. Great, and I can see all 3 of those areas are proving popular there. Give you a few more moments.
Somebody said all 3 in the chat, which doesn't surprise me at all.
Yes, and I'm sure all 3 might be relevant. If you can pick the one that feels most relevant right now, that would be great. Great, okay, I'm going to close that poll in just a second. Super, and Fran, I'm just going to hand over to you to talk through this one.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. I'm really mindful of everybody's time, so thank you so much to everyone who's still here. This is just very quickly, our next webinar is on September the 26th. So if this one has resonated with you, please do join us again then at the same time. And it's letting go of perfectionism, which covers all manner of things and is actually really linked to this as well, because I think we all have this idea, don't we, in our minds of the perfect friendship, or what the perfect life looks like, or how our academic life should be going at school, or whatever it may be. And this has some really tangible strategies that you can work through with your child to help them move away from perfectionism, and therefore develop that level of resilience, knowing that it's okay to not be perfect, to make mistakes, and that is where our learning comes in. So I will pop a link to this one in the chat in a moment, but when you get the slides, these are clickable links. So if you'd like to register nice and early, you can do. Lots of people have asked about the recording, and yes, you will get that tomorrow. And some people have asked if they can share it with friends. I think it's very shareable, and always our webinar will go on our website as well. So you can always point your friends to our website, and all of our webinars are up there. And also that reminds me as well, we've also got a page with all of our blogs and our top tips, which more or less written versions of our webinars really, and some other content as well. So that'll all be on there, and I will pop that into the chat in the moment. If you would like to as well, we'd love to hear again a bit more about your feedback. So I will pop a link in the chat with a Trustpilot link if you would be happy to do that. That would be lovely. And I think while I do those links, Lou, are you happy to just have a little check on some of the questions if we've got a couple of minutes perhaps?
Yeah, absolutely. As Fran said, we're very mindful of your time. So if you're short on time, do feel free to drop off there. That's the end of the content this evening. Fran and I are staying online to have a look at some of the questions that have come through. But if you need to drop off, please do so. And thank you for your time and for joining us. We hope to see lots of you at the next webinar, all about perfectionism. So just while Fran is putting that link in the chat box,
yeah,
I'm going to have a little look through and just see if there are any questions that perhaps we haven't yet covered. Feel free to write any other questions in the chat box now too. And there's so much in here. Just give me a moment as I look through it.
Yeah, I will have a look as well and have a scan over these.
Okay, so yeah, lots about controlling friend.
There's one from somebody just saying that their child's very different at school to at home, and I'm not sure sort of which way round that might be, but it's always really helpful to maybe chat with teachers and just find out the differences in behaviour between home and school, and therefore which aspect of that they might need some more support with, unless I've misread that.
Yes, yeah, and maybe having a chat with them, making me think, Fran, about, you know, how do you feel when you're at home compared to at school, and where do you feel most relaxed or most yourself? And what is it, let's assume that they maybe say at home, you know, what is it about home that allows you to feel comfortable and relaxed? And then that might lead into a nice conversation about how can we get that relaxed and comfortable feeling at school. I can see one here. Oh no, it's this one. Yeah, lots about a controlling friend who's unpleasant, strong influence, some other children, and leaves your child isolated. I mean, all those things we covered about red flags, definitely. And in terms of getting your child to understand the impact, ask those questions about, you know, how do you feel when you're with them? And maybe even say, you know, is this a friendship that you see? What do you get from it? What do you get back from this friendship? Because I don't think children always see it in those terms. They just, as I mentioned earlier, they see, well, I have to keep every friendship going because I've got to be a kind, nice, positive person. But I think it's totally fine to say, I can see you're giving a lot to this friendship, this relationship. What do you get back from it? And that can be a really powerful question, because if your child says, well, you know, I don't feel big, I feel quite small, having spent time with them, they don't make me laugh, I don't, you know, have fun with them, then it kind of begins to lead to that, okay, well, is that the type of friendship that we want to be in? Okay, I'm having a little look through.
Just again, people asking about the recording. So yes, you will definitely get a copy of the slides and the recording of the session as well.
Okay, there's some interesting ones about only children. So, you know, with no siblings, how that kind of comes into play, and perhaps that dynamic between when you are an only child, when you're in a friendship group, you are craving that attention and you want to be that center of attention, which I think is quite natural and quite normal. And they're coming perhaps from a different context, aren't they? From perhaps other people who have that experience of all of those things we mentioned, the negotiation skills, the conflict resolution at home. So I think definitely conversations with your child about that. And all of those ideas about practice. So can you give your child other opportunities to put those skills into practice? Really important. And I suppose some of those questions, those great questions, you know, how do you think it might feel when you behave that way or you say that thing, to get your child to kind of reflect on it as well. Any others, Fran, that are coming up?
There was one, somebody mentioned that their child says they are happy playing alone, but she's worried, or the parent's worried, that their child is maybe masking that. And how do they know they're really happy? And I think that goes back to what we were saying about asking them those questions. Oh, how did you feel when? So, you know, at school today, playing on your own, how did you feel about that? And just, I guess, create that space, because I think sometimes children mask their feelings because they're almost trying to protect parents. So letting them know that you're okay if they're not okay might help them open up if they maybe are masking. But hopefully they are very content playing on their own. But I guess you must have a little bit of a red flag making you possibly ask the question. So I think yeah, a lot of open conversation, and in those moments when it doesn't feel too confrontational, so walking home from school or driving in the car or doing the washing up, playing a board game, those are good opportunities for conversation. See what else.
Yeah.
I think we're losing questions amongst some really lovely comments, so thank you so much, everybody, saying how good it's been.
Yeah, I'm really glad that these ideas have been helpful for you. Okay, who's driving?
I think a lot of it comes down to, I think it was one of the last tips about children just really kind of honouring who they are and knowing that it's okay not to be liked by everybody and they won't be everyone's cup of tea. And I think if we can kind of internalise that and kind of feel that quite honourably, then that helps us cope with feeling left out, or feeling like friends are trying to control us, or feeling like it's not okay to be on our own. A lot of the questions being asked, I think, do come down to that. Just if we can instill this kind of sense of self-worth in children, it can help them manage, you know, all these things. And of course, that's easier said than done. But hopefully these strategies this evening can support with that.
Definitely.
And
perhaps one here, Fran, just to kind of close on, a question about how to help them choose the right type of friend. And I think this is really interesting, that as parents, we sometimes feel like we can see the person we want to be friends with, the right type of person, and we sort of force it or instigate it. And I guess maybe the idea here is to try and resist that urge and just let the natural friendships play out. Because by doing that, and if we put all of these ideas that we've covered this evening into practice, inevitably our child is going to seek out friendships that might not be right, and that's part of it. And I think it's really important to let that happen so that they have that experience and know how to spot the red flags. You can be there to do all the things that we've covered this evening, you know, if it doesn't go right, but it's a really useful life lesson, because let's face it, we're not going to be there as parents to choose the right people for them when they're older. They have to learn these skills themselves, but not always easy. I do appreciate that. So it has been brilliant chatting to you all this evening. Again, as I said, I'm aware of time, so we'll bring it to a close here, but thank you all for being so engaged. If you've come away and you've still got a question, a burning question, please do just get in touch, info@rolemodels.me. And thank you all so much for your time. You will receive a copy of the recording and the slides, and we really encourage you to sign up for the perfectionism webinar, which will be taking place on September the 26th. So from Fran and I, a very big thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed this evening. Thank you. Good night.
Thanks so much. Have a great evening. Bye, everyone.
Bye.